Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Smolenski, and I'm here to talk about a research project I just recently wrapped up. This one is around the Parker persona, who are product managers. This particular research project focuses primarily on one thing, learning how Parkers navigate within GitLab. This project is part of a larger effort that the research team and the foundations team are doing to understand more about some of our personas and how they navigate within GitLab. So this is just one of those personas. I want to briefly talk a little bit about how the research project was structured, because I think that's important to know. There were three components. The first was a set of interviews to really learn more about our participants, how they use GitLab, why, their top 3 tasks, things like that. The second part was a diary study where we asked these participants to document what they did in GitLab and how they navigated to those things. That was over a 1 to 2 week span. And lastly was a set of follow-up interviews where I was able to go deeper into those previous findings and also learn about some possible suggestions that some of these participants had, particularly around navigating to the things they need to get to. Okay, I'll be skipping several slides just to try to keep this short. So jumping into the top takeaways. So we learned that Parkers, first and foremost, they really need to know what's going on within the projects that they are responsible for. Sometimes that means that they have to go across multiple projects because they're responsible for more than one. So keep that in mind. The second big thing was getting to their projects, obviously, is a critical first step. The way they do this, they have browser bookmarks that they save, and they can jump that way. Another way, some of them use the GitLab company homepage, and they can search or scroll down and click on the project that they need to jump to from that list. A third way was using the top menu in the top left. Some people use that. So we learned how they get to those projects. Once they're in a project, they navigate to issues, to milestones, and to boards. And the main reason why is because that's where the information is that they need. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So the primary tasks for Parker, they kind of fell into these 3 buckets. The first is they need to understand the status of a project. They need to know what's happening and who is doing what. This is done by looking at the activity within a project. So things like number of commits, what those commits are, looking at issues, boards, and milestones. The second top task is they monitor backlogs. This is really around task management to learn what's done and what's left to do also, because they're responsible for keeping that going. They do that by looking at boards and milestones at that higher level. And the third major thing is they comment. So they comment about code quality, resolutions, progress, due dates, things related to product management. They do that by working in issues. So some of these tasks, they are routine. A lot of these are done every day. Sometimes they are cyclical too. It really depends where they are in their sprint. Sometimes they're doing more of these things or less of these things per project. And I want to stress one more time that Parkers really rely on issues to understand what's important to them. That's where the detail is. And think about navigation. They need to get to those things. So they do that by navigating through projects or direct linking through email alerts as well. There are some other tasks that Parkers do that surfaced up. One is around documenting and reading wikis. There's lots of documentation that they create, that they refer to within those wikis, and those are at a project level too. Some of them also, they handle access around a project or group. So they need to kind of go in, remove or grant people access. And that's typically done ad hoc as either new projects emerge or new people join that project. So they're navigating to wikis and project information within the left nav sometimes as well. So what are the workflows on how they do those things? They were pretty similar, but the starting points varied a little bit. So a high-level workflow, this table summarizes it very clearly. Getting to a project. The starting points were bookmarking, like I mentioned earlier, the company GitLab homepage, and that top menu. Some of these were efficient, some were convenient. And the next high-level workflow, viewing boards or milestones, starting points, same as above. But this could be improved a little bit because the way they have to do this is navigate to another project via those other ways that are listed above. Think about Parker if they're responsible for 2 or more projects and they need to see what's going on. Certainly boards and milestones and even some issues, they need to back out and go back in. So that could be improved. Getting to an issue, they use links from email alerts, links from other applications like Jira, etc. So those are viewed as efficient because it's essentially one link, you're right where you need to be. The workflows for Parker is fairly interesting because they're quick to complete. They're shallow, 1 to 3 clicks, and they're there. They're also very well established. So their pathways they felt were fairly efficient thanks to bookmarking. And they're really, and those links that they get from email alerts, they take them right there. So they were pretty satisfied in that regard. Some of them also used those other third-party applications that I talked about. So where exactly are they clicking within GitLab? I'm going to jump to this mural. I recommend anyone who's watching this to look at this mural in Mural. There's a link here. This really documents it all. So this is almost like a visual heat map where you can see how they're coming in. They're clicking on issues. They're going in there. They're going in boards and milestones and a few other spots too. So this checks out completely with what they were telling me earlier in their interviews. This is exactly where they're clicking. And also, just as importantly, it also gives us some indication on where they're not clicking too. So something to consider. So pain points when navigating. There were some pain points, but there weren't really major ones experienced with their top workflows because they were fairly established already. But to talk about some pain points that were experienced outside of those, there's a lack of personalized view. So that's probably the biggest one. Imagine having to navigate in and out of projects and you need to go to places to see what you care about. And they all happen to kind of be the same thing, which might be a board or an issue, but in different projects. It's a lot of jumping around. So what this is essentially a desire to create a customizable place to put the things that they care about in one area, so they don't have to go in and out of other projects. A few other things that were called out as pain points: hard to learn. So that's not necessarily GitLab as a tool, but the navigation as well, because some of those things are just hard to understand. Suggestion there was providing learning material catered to Parkers. Another is search. Works as designed, but still too many results. Some weren't that relevant either. So the current workaround with that is that people may avoid using it. That's what we saw here a little bit. There is a recommendation to just align search behavior to mental models. Also, there's something about nomenclature, which is very relevant to the left nav. So the naming of elements wasn't clear or intuitive for some of these Parkers. So again, something to consider as well. Lots of quotes here. Suggestions. So this was a great conversation across all participants, and definitely saw some themes here. And it's really these two big themes came up a lot. The first is personalization. So I talked about this already, where almost like a dashboard's being created where they can put the things in that might be relevant across projects to live in one spot. So that would reduce overall navigation for Parkers. The second is reducing the number of navigation elements in that left nav. So this is directly related to the left nav. The thinking here was to allow some type of customization that could be done several ways. One way might be allowing the user to pick and choose what they want. Another might be as you're creating your GitLab account, you want to select from a number of profiles, one of which might be product manager. And by default, you're given fewer left-hand navigation elements to choose from. Another might be just clumping them together in groups where we're kind of helping them out a little bit. So if there's any interest in doing the personalization piece, strongly recommended we do further research to really look into that and make sure we're doing that as they're expecting it. So next steps, obviously, this will be fed into some of the design work that's currently being worked on by the foundations team. So lastly, there's an appendix that goes into more detail around who some of these participants are, and also lots of links to the resources, including that Mural mapping overlay. So strongly suggest, if there's one thing to look at, check that out, please. So that is it. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.